A little bit about Soroptimist. We are a global volunteer organization. We provide women and girls access to education and training to achieve economic empowerment. Worldwide, Soroptimist International has 160,000 members in clubs in more than 120 countries. We have two signature programs. The first is Live Your Dream, an education award for women who provide the primary financial support for their families. And each year, Soroptimists distribute more than $2.8 million in educational awards to about 1,700 women and girls around the world. Nearly all have overcome obstacles, including poverty, domestic violence, teen pregnancy, and alcohol or drug addiction. Locally, Soroptimist International Huntington Beach recently awarded 14 Live Your Dream Awards, totaling $21,500. And I know many of you on this call helped us accomplish that goal. Our other signature program is Dream It, Be It, which gives girls tools they need to achieve education and career goals, empowering them to break the cycles of violence abuse. We work with girls who may have unstable home lives, young mothers, or in foster care. Again, locally, my club, Soroptimist International of Huntington Beach, we have 42 members. We meet regularly on a virtual basis, and we're more determined than ever to raise funds for these women and girls. And now I'd like to introduce Mary Chiappetta, the chair of our Stop Human Trafficking Committee.
Thank you, Linda. Well, it's January, and that means it's National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. They used to just call it Human Trafficking Month, Awareness Month, but I think this change was good because it calls human trafficking what it is, and that is slavery. We usually have a dinner format with a speaker, but just like everyone else, we had a pivot this year. We are excited because this is our largest program meeting ever, and we have over probably about 110 registrations. And the greatest thing is we have 7 different states represented that I know of. So a shout out to the Illinois, Kansas, Missouri, Oregon, California, Florida, and Indiana people. What this helps us do is have seven more states with advocates in it to get this word out about human trafficking and what a horrible crime it is. If you're from somewhere else, put it in the chat box. We'd like to know that we're reaching out to everyone. Previous January meetings have included a lot of different speakers. We've had the District Attorney's Office, the Orange County Task Force Law Enforcement. We've had nonprofits who provide services to survivors. And we've also had survivors themselves coming and telling us their amazing personal stories. We have a Stop Human Trafficking Committee, and we have 12 members from our club in that. We're members of the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force, and we partner with nonprofits that help survivors, including Waymakers, the Salvation Army, and International Sanctuary, to name a few. All right, now our format today is going to be interview style, so you can always see the speaker clear in front of you. We've muted everybody so that we have clear communications with our guests. And as we go along, you're going to have questions because this is a fascinating topic and you can never learn enough. So go ahead and put the questions in the chat box, and Terry, our co-producer, is going to be monitoring that, and we'll get to that in the latter part of the session. So right now I'd like to turn it over to Stephanie Lucen, who's our co-director of programs, to introduce our speaker tonight.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mary. It is my pleasure to introduce to you tonight our featured guest for this evening, Deidre Pujols. For those of you who may not know her, she is a driven philanthropist and a dedicated entrepreneur. She is the founder of 3 nonprofit organizations, the Pujols Foundation, Open Gate International, and Strike Out Slavery. If that isn't enough, Deidre is also a devoted mother of 5 children. In February of 2019, the United Nations Women for Peace Association recognized Deidre and Albert Pujols with the Humanitarian Award for their efforts to combat human trafficking. Her long list of speaking engagements includes the White House and the Vatican. We are so fortunate to have her and honored to have her speak with us tonight. You can't help but be inspired by her accomplishments and her lifelong passion for advocating for those in need and giving a voice to the voiceless. Please join us in welcoming Deidre Pujols.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. This is so different than a big room full of real people, but I'm so excited to be here with you guys. So thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you, Deidre. I'd like to ask the first question now. And since it is National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month, we want to get right into that. And we've read statistics that human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal industry in the world, generating 150 billion per year for traffickers worldwide. In your extensive work in this area, can you tell us, what does human trafficking look like? I know that's a big question. And what are the root causes of this escalating crime?
Oh, that's a loaded question. That's the $1 million question. I mean, you know, I have had the opportunity since 2016 to really fly all over the world and have a really personable opportunity to learn and get educated from boots on the ground frontline workers. I've had an opportunity to sit in the White House, like you said, or in the United Nations at meetings, and in the slums in third world countries, and really try to understand the fullness of the answer to that question. And really, I'd have to say there might not be one, because the scope of human trafficking is so vast, and it's very tricky. And matter of fact, I think my friends at IJM say that there's like 27 different kinds of trafficking, which I couldn't even name them all. So I think what's happened is we have identified a modern type of slavery that we're just not used to talking about in our culture. Like, it seems historic. And I'm kind of out. I've just decided not to do anything just because it seems so big. It might seem that it can't ever get accomplished as far as annihilating this thing we call human trafficking or ending it. Because frankly, I don't really think that's realistic. But it doesn't mean that I shouldn't do anything. And that's the message I've kind of been sharing with people. I think the most powerful place that we start are the places that we influence as far as impacting or trying to make a difference in human trafficking.
Thank you. That was terrific. And Mary, I think you might have a question.
Yes. Can I just follow up with that and say, what are the root causes, though? What happens? How do people get to be trafficked?
So just disclaimer, I might go on a tangent and have to like revisit what you even asked me in the first place. I know she asked me that in the first question, and it's a great question. I think I had a live Instagram interview the other night with a trafficking. Well, she doesn't claim to be a trafficking survivor. She actually was she's a survivor of a sex industry. So she willingly put herself out into the industry, and then obviously realized, you know, much later what that was. It was coercion. It was a power trip. It was some other things. But she said it best. She really said that, what is the root of why this thing happens? And really, her and I talked for a long time about the root, because if we really don't go after the root, we're just going to keep plucking up weeds, you know? And so her and I discussed the idea of the family breakdown. And as long as the family the family unit is compromised, then the way our society is set up is also compromised, because we're a direct result into our immediate spaces. So if it's your home, if it's your church, if it's your work, if it's your neighbors, if it's school, the places that you have to engage in every day, those are the places of impact. So if your family unit starts to fall apart and there's no direction for like kids to have an example or be raised up in a family, that oftentimes is where you just start to see the dissolve of the society's setup.
Right.
That really is like super deep, under the surface conversation that often people are not having. We just keep talking about the trying to help what we're finding as symptomatic of the family breakdown. So that to me is like the ultimate answer. But how realistic is it to get to that place? I don't know. I don't have all the answers tonight. But I will say that vulnerability is probably the number one cause of how a person could find themselves in a human trafficking situation. It could be vulnerability, it could be manipulation, it can be coercion. And I'm oftentimes when people are thinking trafficking, they're thinking just sex trafficking, but there's so many other trafficking. So, I mean, lots of labor trafficking happens. A young lady might get promised a nanny job and she gets to this other country, gets her passport taken away, gets forced into some kind of bizarre situation if it's sex, or if it's like a forced labor situation where she's not getting paid and she's working really hard and maybe there's some abuse. I've heard all of those stories. I've met those people who have come out of those situations. So those things are very real. But when you start to compartmentalize the different areas of human trafficking, you could start to talk about like the sex trafficking industry. Well, there's a demand there. And if the demand wasn't there, that wouldn't be a job. You know what I mean? So I think you have to like systematically start to analyze how the industries come to what they are. For instance, you can start talking about a gentleman who's I always give this illustration. A man in his 50s did not decide to wake up one day and buy a ticket to an Asia, thousands of miles away on the other side of the country to buy a 7-year-old's virginity for $1,000. Something happened that created that thing inside of him. And oftentimes you'll find that men start in pornography and then it grows and it grows and it grows. And they always have to have more, because it's science that pornography is an addiction. And as you feed that addiction, you always have to have more, like any addiction to anything. So like I said, I don't come with all the answers. I would like to think that tonight I'll be able just to share my personal perspective. I do not ever try to act like an expert or give information that I can't back, or that I haven't, personally been a part of finding the answers. So these are just some of the things that I've learned along the way. I mean, there's so many unreal things that go on, like underground internet child pornography. I mean, it's just sick. And and the stories that I've heard from that and how that's happening. Families in Asia who are selling their young girls because they're more valuable than the boys into selling their kids, even if it's just like their kid being told that their kid's going to go get a good education, and their kids get sent off and they end up being child trafficked, or they're in child pornography and the pornography is sold. So there's just all these different, aspects of the issue of trafficking. But like I said, if I start to get out too big, thinking too big, it can be really discouraging, and you'll start to lose focus. And so for me, I just really try to stick to the things that I know that I can, the things that I can actually be an influence in those spaces.
Yeah. Well, excellent. Thank you for that background. That is really important. All right. So now we're going to move to one of my favorites, strikeout slavery. I'm a big baseball fan, and strikeout slavery started right here with our beloved Angel, We're excited about that. And in fact, in 2019, we had a big group from Soroptimist go to the game, and we had a ball, and then we had a big opportunity, or thought we would go to the 2020, and then there we go. So ladies and gentlemen, we have a video that we're about to launch that's going to give you some background on strikeout slavery. Remember now that we're in Zoom land, which when you're sharing screens and videos and whatnot could be called adventure land. We think we're doing good. We're going to roll it. And if it's a little choppy or whatever, just hang in there with us. Here we go.
Strikeout slavery is using a baseball stadium to bring awareness about the issues of human trafficking. We have an alliance of organizations who have come together really in efforts to help create an environment that's safe and palatable to educate our community, our fans, about the issues of human trafficking.
We're learning more about strikeout slavery this morning. Strikeout slavery.
The Strikeout Slavery Day and concert.
I love this partnership here.
It's a great cause, great organization called Strikeout Slavery. A lot of people don't realize human trafficking is happening in their backyard.
Most people don't know that there are actually more people in slavery today than in any other time in human history. And so places like this are these beautiful platforms where people come together of all kinds of backgrounds, and they're here to have a good time, but also to make sure that we're here to see that everybody gets to be free.
For Homeland Security investigation, it's really important for us to collaborate and to partner with such an important organization and utilize this platform to continue to raise awareness.
At the end of the day, human trafficking is a 21st century crime against human dignity, and we need to do better in raising the community's awareness and how to address it.
We all have a responsibility to work together to end exploitation of all human beings everywhere in the world.
Support this organization, everyone, and the advancement and evolution of all of us. Strikeout slavery.
Wow, that is a great video. It makes you want to just get to the game. I think that was very clear on my screen, so I'm going to assume everyone could see that clearly. So my first question is, it is such a fun day and free concerts. My gosh, the Jonas Brothers. It appears that you're also trying to target a little bit of a younger crowd to get the word out. So how do we talk to kids about human trafficking, and at what age, and what do you tell your children?
It's funny because I talk about it so much, and then like when we go out and we're in the mall or we're driving somewhere, if I see anything, I'll say something and my kids are like, "Mom, you are paranoid. You think everybody's trafficked." And I'm like, everyone is trafficked. Don't ever look away from that stuff. Just being lighthearted about it, but not wanting them to one, be unaware of what it is. I really want them to be educated. What is this? And then two, if I don't share it with them, someone somewhere, if it's in cyber world or if it's a friend at school, is gonna say something about, I think at some point, human trafficking, or a scenario that we would actually label trafficking, but maybe they have another language for it. I think one of the greatest dangers is our electronics in the age that we live in. That's what we're up against right now. And so what I often what I believe and what I try to encourage is Strike Out Slavery is a campaign. It's an education and prevention campaign. And I believe that in order for us to help educate people about the issue, they'll be better prepared when they face maybe an encounter with it in some way. I will say that I imagine that I'm on the starting line with the bad guy. And if I get to the person first, I win. Meaning that when he makes it to the finish line and he tries to sow a seed of coercion or manipulation, getting a vulnerable teenager perhaps, or anybody in a vulnerable situation, they'll already have like a conviction inside of them that would say, wait a minute, you know, or an intuition, or that would basically be like, hey, this doesn't sound right. This kind of sounds like what I learned before. And it's really, we need to get it into our school system so that our kids can be aware, because there's too many stories now of kids who have had access to people reaching out to them, pretending like they're somebody else. Or it could be an older person pretending like they're a younger person, maybe in their video games. Everything is like, people can connect so easy these days. So there are people who know exactly how to go after young people, and they'll start to watch patterns and behaviors. They'll see somebody, they're taught how to look for young girls that perhaps look like they're lonely or they're vulnerable, or all these different things. So we have to make sure that our young people are educated on how to know what, when it comes in front of them. When I picked Nick Jonas, which was a funny story, I had met Nick Jonas and the brothers before. So I was excited when he wanted to do the event at Strike Out Slavery. He did it for me 2 years in a row. And I hadn't listened to him during that time lately, his music. And I went on YouTube and I saw some of his videos, and I forgot about that song he had called You Got Me in Chains or something.
Oh.
And his videos were had a lot of sexual content. And I got really worried. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly opposite of what I'm trying to do. But I really felt like I heard from the Lord, and and he reminded me, like, no, he has the audience that you need to speak into. And so sure enough, it was one of the largest concerts, or the largest concert the Angels have ever had after a game. It was like 25 to 30,000 people. And a majority of those were young screaming girls. So at the end of the day, it was safe. Everybody had a great day. But yeah, I mean, just being able to use those kind of major platforms to help educate our communities. And really, we have a social responsibility to do it. And so does the Angels. People pour tons of money and they make millions of dollars off of our community members watching sports games. So I believe that we have an absolute, obligation to service our community members with an issue like this.
So I'm thinking you might have the inside scoop on baseball this year. Is there going to be a season? How are you planning it with Strike Out Slavery this year? Or are you just kind of playing it by ear? Or what does the future look like, I guess, for Strike Out Slavery as well?
Well, we modified it for 2020. I mean, it had to become messaging. Albert and I did a PSA that is actually, I think it's still in circulation across the country, and has been able to reach millions of people. And again, it's hearing that, getting it into our culture, getting it into our ears in our communities, and keeping the conversation alive is critical. So we modified what Strike Out Slavery is, and it's really a platform to help just continue to share events, to share information. Just because baseball stopped, human trafficking did not stop. And there have been ways that people have gotten more creative of how to keep human trafficking alive. So we also have to keep the conversation alive in education. But I do believe there's going to be a 2021 season. And I'm sure in some respects it's going to be different for fans' experiences. I do hope that they let fans back into the stadiums like they're doing with football. And just being responsible, as far as how we care for that space. But most likely, I'm gonna probably assume that any kind of huge gathering like festivals, that we were putting on in the stadiums, probably not going to be allowed in 2021, which, you know, hey, it's just something you gotta to walk through. But now that we have this technology, it's extremely convenient to still reach, you know, 83 people on one phone call, you know, one Zoom session. So I think we can still be creative about the way we are continuing to educate the community.
Great, thanks. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Stephanie, who's got some questions.
Hello again. Another one of your major philanthropic efforts is that of Open Gate International. And we also have another video that we'd like to show your work here. So we're going to roll that video. Hopefully it will go off just as well as the Strike Out Slavery.
Everybody, my name is Deidre Pujols.
And I'm Deidre Pujols. In 2016, I got an invitation from Benny Yu with El Pozo de Vida and $27 million to come and see some of the programs that they're running in Mexico City. So myself and Judy Lamborn, who's now the executive director of Open Gate International, set our sails to head down to Mexico and to see everything that Benny was doing with his family there on the ground. And from there, we went to so many other countries. We were very intrigued by the work that was going on in human trafficking. We wanted to learn more. We wanted to meet more people. And by the time we finished traveling, I had to really sit down and figure out what I was going to do about all the things I had just experienced, because to do nothing was not an option. And I started Open Gate International because one of the things that I saw missing in all parts of the world was workforce reintegration, getting people who have been rescued and rehabilitated back into a thriving and a healthy lifestyle. And so what we've done with Open Gate International is create a culinary program that is complemented with a life skills program, so we can really reach the person at every angle. We can reach them if they're coming out of trauma. We can walk with them while they're still healing. And in addition, we are teaching them how to cook, and we're helping people get jobs.
Well, I didn't know much about human trafficking until Deidre started traveling and for a year and started coming to me and sharing with me about the cases that she was, the events that she was seeing, and she wanted to make the difference. I think a lot of us didn't know much about it. Myself, I still get educated about, you know, the issues that happen through human trafficking. And, you know, I think everybody look at you as a celebrity and they think that you need to change your life through baseball. And, you know, you can change your life through Open Gate International, through the Pujols Family Foundation, to Strike Out Slavery, you know. And those are the opportunities that we take seriously about here in the community.
Much like Albert, I have a very philanthropic DNA. I've always wanted to help people. No matter what I had or didn't have, I always found a way to help somebody else. And I think Albert and I agree that the impact that we need to make is in our family first, but then into our community.
Wow, that was great. We have another question for you. There are 3 phases of a survivor's life: rescue, rehabilitation, and reintegration. While other nonprofits focus on rescue and rehabilitation, OGI focuses on reintegration. Why is reintegration such a critical component of healing and moving forward?
Well, it's everything about a person's, you know, confidence and drive to somehow walk into success. I think the one common denominator in all of the countries that I had studied in, and also from the information I gathered from the States, was that there was a bit of a gap in how to try to create opportunities for all of the people who are coming out of any kind of trafficking situation. And so that's where I sat down and just kind of had to evaluate, what could I do for the cause? How could I help impact in any kind of way the issue of human trafficking? And I had to basically review what my passions were, what were my skill sets, what were my loves, and my experiences. And so for me, that was, I have a DNA for business, and I love entrepreneur world. I have an entrepreneurial spirit, and I also love culinary arts. I've studied culinary arts for years. And so I could just kind of thought about the idea of designing a culinary school that would be available to individuals who are coming out of human trafficking. So when I started Open Gate International, I thought that we were designing it specifically for individuals who are coming out of human trafficking. But as we started to create relationships throughout Orange County, we realized that we were having these experiences with organizations with the homeless population, people coming out of prison, at-risk youth who are aging out of the foster care system. There were domestic violence survivors, veterans. There was just this vast array of populations of people who are being serviced in that rescue and recovery, those rescue and recovery places, but reintegrating them into society can be difficult. So that's really where I felt like, let me help try to bridge the gap for whoever I can, however many people we can, to bring them back into the workforce. So that's what Open Gate International was designed to do. We've graduated 150 students so far. We also have individuals who are coming out of trafficking situations. Interestingly enough, we have many who are coming out of labor trafficking out here in California. So we designed the program, but at the end of the day, I can teach people how to cook. Chef Cynthia is our head master chef who teaches the class, and she's brilliant. And we can teach people how to cook all day, but if we don't deal with some of the trauma and the issues that they are coming out of or still walking through, they're not going to keep jobs very long. They're not going to, if somebody leaves my program and they don't feel more empowered and valuable and purpose driven than they did when they came in, then we didn't do our job. So for me, the life skills actually really is the meat of our organization, because the life skills the curriculum that Judy Lamborn created is an opportunity for individuals to get their identity, to have their purpose, to have passion, to be inspired and encouraged. When they're feeling down, we lift them up. There's just this whole, just the process of who they are is so important to us, and making sure that we deal with things like unforgiveness in our class. Because if people have unforgiveness, it creates bitterness. And if you walk around with bitterness on the inside of you, it's going to end up being a ticking time bomb. So how can we work on that with you? There's just different things that people go through that they'll take into their work. And we want to help people know how to manage those different components. So Open Gate International has been an amazing blessing. We're actually getting ready to start our first session for 2021 just next week. I had an orientation with the new group yesterday, and they are so excited to be back in the human space and have connection. And they have a 15-week-long intensive culinary program. We're an accredited program, and all of our students are able to come at no cost to them. So it is an organization, and it is, something that I created that we created for the community, so that we can help get people off the streets and back into life. And I've watched people show up who live in their vans or their cars, and they're buying apartments and building their life and, getting to those next levels. So it's been a real mind blower, that organization.
You touched on some of the things that I was going to ask in the next question. So I'd like to know a little more about the actual life skills that you do teach, and some of maybe perhaps the culinary skills that they teach.
So Judy Lamborn and Chef Cynthia have a really thick curriculum for this program. It's very interactive. All of our classes are hands-on from day one. So the students are learning just almost like a trade school or a tech school, you know, they're hands-on straight away. But I think I touched on some of those things. We dive into, in the life skills portion, we dive into life issues, things like etiquette, you know, showing up on time for work, you know, that even for somebody like maybe a majority of us on this call, no, we show up on time for work. Like that's what you do. That's etiquette. It's honoring your work. You have responsibilities. And for individuals who are, for instance, coming out of incarceration, they've been institutionalized for however long, some since they were kids. And, you know, I've had this particular case happen a couple different times where individuals were really institutionalized in prison since they were teenage boys. And as grown men, now they're having to like reintegrate into society, and it's very difficult for them. So we have to deal with those things, and we deal with those kinds of things in class and teaching basic etiquette in the workplace. But, you know, having forgiveness is probably the most powerful one that I mentioned earlier, because a lot of times people are coming from trauma or they're coming from broken families. There's a lot of hurt from their past, and they have never learned how to deal with it. So it's not like we sit there and try to be, you know, like therapists in some kind of way, but we do really want the person to get their identity, like not letting their past decide their future or determine who they're gonna be. And that story really comes from my past, which is being born to teenage parents in the middle of the ghetto in Kansas City, or my husband who was born in a third world country. Well, we never let those, you know, by statistics, we should be nothing, you know, we should. So that's another meeting, but I'm just saying, like, I just don't settle for people, no matter what they've been through or the trauma that they've dealt with. I just don't settle with watching somebody live beneath their privilege. When every day, you know, my confession is I want to maximize every minute of my life that God, you know, prescribed for me to have today. Like, how can I be a blessing to somebody? How can I make a program better? How can I make the cafe better? So to me, it's like those life skills programs are just the essence of how to function and be confident, you know, in their existence.
You mentioned that the program is 15 weeks long. What actual culinary skills do they get when they graduate?
They learn everything. I mean, they learn the types of chopping, you know, and cuts and slices and dicing. They learn sanitation, how to keep things clean, what not to touch, like cross-contamination. I mean, they learn really basic sanitation protocols. Then they learn different kinds of meats. You know, Chef has this whole presentation of breaking down parts of the cow and what the different names are, and same with chicken and fish cutting. And I mean, they learn, it's like a crash course of what a traditional culinary school might be. And then at the end of the course is when they start to get into pastries and different desserts. And it's really amazing because Chef gives them an opportunity to create, which culinary arts is an art. I mean, it's a creation, and people are typically creative. So she'll let them design their own dishes as we start to get to the end of the program. And then they also get to design their own cake, which is phenomenal. So they really get, I mean, they're definitely entry level kitchen workers for sure.
Well, thank you. I'd like to turn this back over to Mary. She has some more questions for you.
Yes, Deidre, we want to hear more about this Open Gate Kitchen and graduates from your Open Gate program. I guess the question is, do you have a way for job placements for them after they graduate? And how does Open Gate Kitchen look and work, and where is it, and what's the menu? Give us the 411 on that.
Okay, so Open Gate International is a C3. It's a nonprofit, and we've graduated 150 students. I mentioned that before. And pre-COVID, we would literally be lining up jobs for them. So I'm hoping that will soon be the case again when our world opens up. But typically we will always ask somebody like, what do you really want to do in culinary? Maybe somebody just wants to do pastries and work in a bakery. We'll get them jobs in a bakery. Somebody maybe wants to work at Disneyland. We got several people jobs at Disneyland. Some people wanted to work in Nobu. We got Nobu jobs, hotels. I mean, we were able to really network and help people get the job that they were wanting, because that's important. You know, we want people to do what they feel like they should be doing. We at Open Gate Kitchen, which is a cafe that we opened to support, it's a sustaining piece of supporting the organization. But we have, our head chef is a graduate of Open Gate International, as well as 3 others. So we have 4 graduate students working for us currently. We're expanding our program really rapidly lately. I started a meal prep program and it's going bananas. And so I feel like we'll be able to add on several other graduate students. We check in with them, especially during COVID. We didn't have to, but we really wanted to make them feel supported. So we granted them like Target gift cards so they could at least buy groceries or different things, that because everybody was in lockdown and these are vulnerable people, you know? So we were able to do things like that. But now that we're trying to be COVID safe and still be able to run our school, that's my hope is that by the time we're done with the 15 weeks of this session that's in place right now, we will be able to find jobs for these individuals, and we'll be persistent about it. But as I said, you know, many hotels and many restaurants are just, they got, you know, people lost their businesses over COVID. So we'll have to see how it goes.
But Open Gate Kitchen is open now, and it's in Costa Mesa?
Yeah, so Open Gate International and Open Gate Kitchen are both in Costa Mesa, and just behind John Wayne Airport. And we have, you saw in the video, we have several other countries that our programs are affiliated in. India and Moldova are the strongest of all the programs. We're trying to rebuild Mexico City's program to be more like our model here in OC, which is our flagship school. So, but we can't go because of COVID. But we're helping support best we can these other operations that we have. They're still serving people the best they can. And yeah, I mean, my hope is to grow the organization, grow the cafe. Like I said, we have catering services. As much as we can try to incorporate our graduate students into our operations, we do.
Okay, so for the local folks, we could visit the cafe, we can cater from the cafe. All of those things are available during COVID right now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, local people, let's support our local business. Well, that's excellent. You know, we've got about 10 minutes left. If you've got a question, please put it in the chat box. And I think at this time, I'm going to turn this over to Terry, who is going to ask some questions that we've gotten from the field.
Again, Deidre, thank you for the work that you do. I'm a pretty emotional person, so pardon me if I start crying. I will just warn you in advance. So here are some of the questions that have come in from our audience. And I apologize, I was writing them down, so I hope I'm not asking you a question that you've already explained. But the first one was, what is the ethical / racial percentage presently in Orange County, the US, and or the world? Do you know that?
Racial?
Yeah, ethical racial percentage. So I'd say, you know, whites versus blacks versus Latinos versus
ethnic,
right?
Yeah. So no, I don't have that number. And oftentimes there was kind of this strange conversation happening in the world of human trafficking and in media about numbers. Is it 27 million? Is it 45 million? Is it 150 billion? Is it whatever? And, you know, really my response to that always is one person is too many.
Right.
So as long as there's one person out there in this situation, we have work to do.
Right.
So I'm not really dialed in on numbers, although I do respect statistics. That's just not my space. I help the people who come to us and need our services. So sorry, I don't have numbers, but
that's okay.
People want to dive into those kind of statistics. They are there. I would just say don't get too consumed by that, because really, I mean, from my personal experience, there is no way to tell how many numbers of people are exposed in this industry.
Right, I agree. We only know who comes forward or who gets reported or who gets arrested or whatever. We don't really know what's underneath the surface. That same person asked if the word slavery, which is appropriate, gets confused with the present racial narrative of the past in the US. So using the word slavery, do you think people get confused about what slavery means? Or from my perspective, slavery is slavery.
Yeah, so that's a great question. It was one of the questions we were asking ourselves as we were trying to restructure the way we were communicating through Strikeout Slavery. You know, this is actually, I'll just repeat myself. This is the same kind of questions that were flying around in the human trafficking space, especially in places like the State Department, where they make the annual tip report. And it is so bizarre how often they change language. It's call it human trafficking. No, it's slavery. Oh, it's modern day slavery. It's this. And I'm like, okay, you can call it whatever you want, whatever it looks like for you, but I'm gonna call it wrong. And we're gonna start there. So for me, I just don't get caught up in the banter of those kinds of things, because it really is quite distracting. Yes, it is one of those words, when you think of slavery, you think maybe history, you know, and then what was that then? And is that what we're seeing today? And you have to go to the direct definition of history. And you look at the scenario and you're like, no, actually, this is slavery too, you know? And so, like I said, I don't get caught up much in that conversation, but it's a good question. It's valid. I think it's fair for sure. And when you're trying to explain to young people, especially, I think it's important to have a dialogue. It doesn't mean you need to pretend like you have all the answers, but you need to at least give people an opportunity to have deeper thoughts when they walk away. That's how I feel.
Super. So another question just came in. I'm going to skip to one of the ones in the chat box right now. What is the appropriate age to talk to young people about human trafficking?
So my kids are 8, 10, 15, 20, and 23. And I mean, they've heard me talking about it since 2016, and asked me, like, what is that, Mom? Like, what do you do when you travel, or what do you know? They're very curious. And I remember my kids going, Mom, my friends are asking me, what do you do? And I just tell them, you just help people all over the world. And I'm like, well, that's great definition. Like, you know, and it was a safe answer. But at the end of the day, my kids have been able to learn what I do, what human trafficking. So I would say, okay, well, by statistics, if you want to be a statistical person, 8 years old, by 8 years old is the average age of when a person is actually encountering their first pornographic experience, whatever that is. That's what the statistics are showing. And so if I know that, then I better be able to meet my kid in that conversation. And I'm not going to be the one to tell people like how to talk to their kids about it. There are better people for that. I actually saw somebody mention on here the Polaris Project. They're a part of our alliance at Strike Out Slavery. It's an amazing organization. StrikeOutSlavery.com has all of our alliance partners on there. And one of those alliance partners, if not several of them, are going to have opportunities of how to speak to your kids. There is information that has been created to help us do that as parents and as community members. How do we talk to young people about it? But if I know that pornography is reaching my child at 8 years old or trying to, I need to be prepared as a parent to also meet my kid there with information. So whether it's a book, whether it's some online recommendations of how to address the topic. But I mean, it's a very alive and kind of, it's alive, and it should be talked about. I would tell people not to be afraid to talk about it. Just get yourself informed first.
Super, thank you. We have time for one more quick question. I think this one's quick, and then I'll turn it back to Linda in order to respect your time. Do you have any books, speaking of books, recommendations on human trafficking that you would recommend someone could read?
Well, I would recommend, like I said, the strikeoutslavery.com. It's where I send everybody, because it's IJM, it's A21, it's Polaris Project. And then you have your guys like Exodus Cry. Exodus Cry is run by a dear friend of mine, one of my best buddies, Benji Nolot, whose organization has just been responsible for really kicking in the gut Pornhub. They got millions and millions of petitioned signatures to try and advocate really for their closure. But at least what they've been able to do is get the major credit card company to take off their platform. They just recently had to remove 80 million videos.
Oh, wow.
80 million.
Wow.
80 million videos on this platform that were either child rapes, child molestations that were videotaped, videos that had sexual acts that were not consensual or that the person gave permission. This site is disgusting. And I don't know how we live on a planet where we allow this kind of thing. So people like Exodus Cry, who are on our alliance, are on there and have incredible information for people to go and tap into. But we have the Missing and Exploited Children group on with us on our alliance. These are people who have worked for years to gather this information. And what I want to be able to do as somebody who is responsible for Strike Out Slavery is to bring the experts through my platform to the community and say, here, I don't have the answers that you need with all of your questions, but here are the people who have been working for years on your answers. And so that's what I would recommend.
That's awesome. We truly appreciate the fact that you're taking these questions just from the audience, and we have run out of time. So with that, I'd like to welcome back SIHB President Linda Lyons.
Thank you for all your questions.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Terry. And thank you so much, Deidre. We really appreciate you so freely giving your time. We can easily see your passion for helping vulnerable people. You'll see the websites for Deidre's organizations, Strike Out Slavery, Open Gate International, the Pujols Family Foundation, and in the screen right now. And Soroptimist International Huntington Beach, I'm pleased to let you know, we'll be making a donation to OGI to thank you for your participation today.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome.
And we also have Live Your Dream grants available for survivors that we could talk to you at a later time. And keep us in mind if you're in need of helping hands in your Strike Out Slavery or OGI efforts. And a reminder to our local audience to keep Open Gate Kitchen in mind and support your local businesses right here in Costa Mesa. Please take note of the human trafficking hotline, which is right there, 888-373-7888. It's an anonymous tip hotline as well as a resource provider for victims. Thank you to everybody, and especially Deidre, so much again for making our program information meeting just spectacular. Again, thank you so much. Good night, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this presentation. Bye-bye.
Guys, have a good night.